For years, the corporate instinct following a data breach was simple: execute a rapid patch-and-pray fix and keep the incident out of the press. Server vulnerabilities were quietly patched, and the vault doors were slammed shut before anyone outside the IT department noticed. This strategy of silence left millions of users sitting in a data vacuum. People continued to use compromised services, completely unaware that their passwords and financial details were actively circulating on the dark web. India's Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023, along with the detailed 2025 rules, put an absolute end to that silence. The legislation recognizes a stark reality of the modern internet. Getting hacked is an unavoidable occupational hazard, but choosing to hide that hack is now a massive legal liability. The exact moment a company's internal monitoring logs register an unauthorized entry is known as T0. From T0 onward, the law mandates a specific, high-stakes legal countdown for every technical failure. Failing to notify authorities and victims within the mandated windows carries a severe financial penalty. Companies face fines of up to 200 crore rupees for non-compliance. These obligations apply universally. Resource-constrained startups and massive multinational corporations alike must establish formal, rigorous incident response protocols. The law categorizes all of these businesses as data fiduciaries, the entities legally deciding how your personal data is collected and used. The accountability goes even further. If a fiduciary hires a third-party data processor to handle server maintenance, and that processor suffers a breach, the fiduciary remains strictly responsible for the fallout. The calculus for modern business is clear. Attempting to cover up a vulnerability is now far more expensive than simply admitting the truth. The moment a breach is confirmed, the first required action is the primary intimation. The data fiduciary must submit an alert to the Data Protection Board without delay. This initial report establishes the basic footprint of the attack. The company must declare the nature of the breach, the extent of the compromised data, and the precise timing of the occurrence. While alerting the state, the company must also address a second front, notifying the data principal, that is, the everyday individual whose information was actually stolen. The law prohibits burying this notice in a lengthy terms of service update. The notification must be sent directly to the user's registered account or email in plain, simple language. The message has to include 4 specific details: a clear description of the leak, the probable consequences for the user, immediate safety steps they can take to mitigate risk, and the direct business contact information for a data protection officer. This FAQ document clarifies another key provision. Users now have the right to submit official grievances regarding how the breach is handled, and the fiduciary is legally required to respond within a prescribed timeframe. This rapid disclosure phase gives both the regulator and the victim the information necessary to freeze accounts and lock down systems before the stolen data can be weaponized. The immediate alerts are only the beginning. By the 72-hour mark, the company must transition from triage to a forensic secondary intimation report. Companies have exactly 72 hours to deliver an exhaustive technical breakdown to the board. If they cannot meet this deadline, they must submit a formal written request for an extension. In this report, the fiduciary has to outline their technical remediation. They must prove exactly what steps they executed to stop the active breach and ensure it cannot recur. The board will also expect proof of prior diligence. The company must demonstrate that technical legal measures, such as data masking or the use of virtual tokens, were actively protecting user data before the intrusion happened. The 72-hour report functions as a strict audit. It determines whether a company was overpowered by an advanced, unforeseeable attack, or if their internal security architecture was negligent all along. Surviving this 72-hour countdown requires companies to adopt a framework of privacy by design, long before a hacker ever targets their network. Boardrooms must execute proactive vendor audits, enforce strict data disposal schedules, and run mandatory simulations to test how effectively their teams handle a live breach. Under the new rules, access logs and monitoring function as the primary evidence a company uses to defend its security architecture before the board. The DPDP Act takes corporate transparency and turns it into a non-negotiable engineering specification. For decades, the financial and emotional burden of identity theft rested heavily on the individual. The new regulations shift that liability squarely onto the data fiduciary. The strict reporting deadlines ensure that when a digital identity is compromised, the actual owner of that data is never the last person to find out. As outlined in this government FAQ, the data principal has a very straightforward duty. They must provide authentic, verifiable information. Once they do, that information is protected by a regulatory framework with actual enforcement power. By tearing down the old culture of corporate silence, India's breach procedures make digital privacy a tangible, enforceable right for every citizen.